Hey, aloha, y'all. Daniel Aaron with you. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I got to tell you straight up, this was a radical switch for me. For the first 25 years of my life, I was really not believing in God would be a little too strong. So not atheist, but probably agnostic. But really, that was just because some level of fear, well, just in case I'm wrong, I don't want to say, right? I don't want lightning to strike me. That's ironic, I realize, because in a sense, lightning did strike. I get ahead of myself. So this is a series, although this video is for you unto itself. You don't need to have watched any others. This is related to the fact that I have recently come out of the closet using the title Reverend, which, by the way, means to revere, right? To hold in high regard, which I do. I hold in high regard Spirit, God, the divine. It also, I learned just today, has a connection to fear, which is relevant to this. Because on some level, I was afraid of God. I was afraid of God not existing, and it didn't make sense to me. So for a lot of my life, I was, it doesn't make any sense. And there are all these questions, logical, rational questions. And then, oh, wait, did I get ahead of myself? Yes, I'm using the title Reverend now for the first time since I was ordained 31 years ago. Why? Because God told me so. Does that sound lame? It does to me in a sense because, right, I think about the Crusades and all the cruelty and injustice that's been done in God's name. However, and it's also accurate for me, there have been nudges and synchronicities and messages that have come forward for me over the last several months that have encouraged me. And as I was speaking with some clients about this recently, will we call it intuition? Do we call it messages from the divine, the voice of God in our ear? Well, here's how it happened for me without going into depth, because each of these could be a book, a novel unto itself, a story. In 1995, I went from not believing, past believing, to knowing there is a greater power, right? There is a force beyond human, right? And that was sometimes I describe where I became a lightning rod for God, a lightning rod for God experience, which changed everything for me, blew up my previous life. I didn't know how to live anymore, so I got obsessed with personal and spiritual development, which intuitively led me to go live at Omega Institute, right? How did I go there? I just knew from the first time I heard about it. That's what happens next. That led me to going to live at Esalen Institute. How did I know? I just knew. And see, this is the thing for me, and maybe you can relate, I don't know. The most important decisions in my life are not ones that I decided, at least not on my own. They were ones where I knew. So I live at Esalen, and something happened. Fell in love with an Italian woman who said, look, come live in Spain with me. I knew that was the thing to do, right? Okay. Later, somebody told me about this center in Holland, Humaniversity. I knew that became the next thing for me, right? Some years later, when someone mentioned to me a teacher by the name of Paul Lowe doing these groups, I knew, right? I'll make it happen, whatever it takes. At the end of my year and a half, and I did a video about my time with him recently, the end of that, when the acorn fell from the tree, landed in my hand, said, change your name. Put down roots for the first time in your life, right? Go from non-monogamy to monogamy. It's time to come back to writing. Right? Lazarus said, when you can hear the whispers, you don't need to hear the screams. There have been times in my life when I was in rough shape, particularly challenged, not feeling my most resourceful when I didn't know what to do. Should I do this? Should I do that? And, partially because I was in my head and trying to figure it out and maybe in survival mode. And I remember times like that praying, God, tell me, tell me, tell me, and show me a sign, give me synchronicity. And what I know now, God's always speaking, always sharing, right? Just like the sun is always shining, even if there are clouds. And God is always speaking, even if I'm busy with other conversations, shall we say. So now, part of my prayer every morning is not, give me a sign. It's not, please show me something synchronistic. Although, of course, I love it when that happens. It does pretty often. My prayer is, may I be attentive to the whispers, right? The urges, the impulses inside me. And do I ever get confused? Is it my ego or is it God? Yeah, of course I do, right? And I learn. What I have also learned is to trust when I feel intuition, right? And especially when it's for someone. Sometimes when it's scary, that's a sign too. And so more and more, I pray, may I hear well, and sometimes it's a breeze. Sometimes it's the rustle of the palm fronds. Sometimes it's somebody that I meet or that calls me. And I say, okay, that's the voice of God. Sometimes it's subtle. It's just a knowing. So my other prayer is, may I have the courage to act upon it even when I don't know, don't understand, even if it scares me. One of my declarations I say every day, I am scintillating, unfiltered expression, reveling in and responding to God's calls and commands. Part of the reason for that is there have been so many times in my life where I felt the impulse to say, to speak, and didn't, for whatever held me back, whatever fear or discomfort I thought would happen. And I remember, and I'll wrap this up for you here, one of my greatest heroes, Martin Luther King Jr., when Brown versus Board of Education passed, that was the law in the US that said, at the time the term was colored children must be integrated in the schools. You can't separate colored children from white children, right? When that finally passed, which now we look at, it's hard to imagine that was ever a law that they would be separate. When it finally passed, someone said to Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. King, is it really the case that so many people are against the colored, right? And Dr. King thought about it for a minute and he said, no, really isn't. There aren't so many, but there are so many people that stand for civil rights that haven't spoken, that haven't given voice. So I am scintillating, unfiltered expression, reveling in and responding to God's calls and commands. Thanks for listening, y'all. I hope this is useful. Let me know. I would love to hear from you. Questions, comments, please. Thank you.